Hey everyone, my name is Rosie and welcome back to my channel. So it is October 1st right now when I'm filming this, and I think it's about time for us to start making some spooky collages just in time for the Halloween season. So let's chat about what I'm thinking. I've had this idea to want to incorporate ghosts into a collage for some time now and haven't quite landed on what I thought was sort of the best way to do that. But I think I have a good way to do this now. So I have some white tissue paper here, and I'm thinking if we cut out little ghost shapes and glue them into a collage, we'll have, little ghosty dudes floating around a scene. And they'll be a little bit transparent. And I think it might, if we can find the right background and the right scene, I think it might be perfect. I also definitely can't be the first person who's done something like this with tissue paper ghost on a collage. Like, I'm sure someone else has done it. I also think someone in a comment on a video a long time ago said something about using tissue paper and how you can get a transparent effect, something like that. And I think I read that and it has been nestled in my subconscious for a year. If I can find that comment, I'll pop it on screen. But the first thing we need to do is create a scene for our ghosts to live in. So let's do that. I did a really small test and glued a very small piece of tissue paper on this scrap piece of paper just to see sort of what was going to happen. And I think the one thing to note is I want to be careful not to have a super light image because I do think the tissue paper is going to get really lost if there's a lot of white area on the scene that I end up creating. So I'm just going to keep that in mind, but I think that was a good test. I also recently got this England book, and I haven't flipped through this yet, but I think that England is notoriously gloomy and a little rainy, I don't know, I've never been, but I just think this might be a good book to start flipping through. I also have something else I wanted to share because I think that you all will appreciate this. I got this giant number stamp from an antique store recently. I think it's a pricing stamp. I don't know, it has, 6 different numbers, and it has some percentages and some number signs and some interesting things. And I just thought this was so giant. I've seen the smaller date ones that I think, I've used them at libraries before to stamp date cards. But this was just so large and so funny. And I thought that maybe one day I could use it in a collage and maybe just stamp numbers all over the place. Anyway, I just thought this was really, really cool. So I picked it up and I thought you all might appreciate it, so I wanted to share that. Now, let's start flipping through this book and start seeing if there's anything in here that we can use to create a sort of ghosty scene. I did find this one background image from this book that I really like. I love that there are lots of layers, and I feel like there's lots of things we can tuck the ghosts behind. So maybe we'll use this. I was also thinking that maybe we could do something with postcards. So I have a bunch of these sort of older postcards that are of, state parks, national parks, mountain things, waterfalls. So maybe we want to do, put 1 or 2 ghosts on a postcard. But I also have these old Boston postcards, which come in this book. And all of these are black and white. And so maybe it'd be fun to put a ghost in some of these scenes. Or maybe we cut a few of these up and try to paste them together and create sort of a weird city sidewalk type thing with a couple different postcards. So I'm thinking these also might be sort of the right vibe for adding ghosts to, and I like that they're black and white. I'm really digging the postcards, so I think I might start there for right now, but maybe we'll do a couple images once we get one under our belts. So let's see what these postcards are all about. So I've been playing around with how these postcards might line up, and this is going to make no sense. And that's kind of the point, is to create a city block that kind of looks really weird. But I'm thinking if I can get, maybe this building to line up with this building back here, and maybe cut out parts of the road and overlap some of these things, I can maybe make this sort of look like it maybe is supposed to be next to each other. And then similarly over here, if I can make this building sort of cover up this building, but still have parts of this, and get sort of maybe the bus is driving onto this road. I think there's little things that I can do to try to integrate them, because I do love this idea of like this weird building, these mashed up buildings that then we can put the ghosts sort of weaving in and out of things. There's lots of things to look at, and I like the idea of this. I'm still not sure if I want to trim everything at the end and get, one long skinny postcard. Still not sure about that, but I think I need to just start trying to merge these together. And again, I understand that this sounds ridiculous, and I'm hoping I can make it work, but we got to just start cutting at things and see if they're going to come together or not. I think these emerged pretty well. I also took a photo and cropped it on my phone so I could see what it would look like if I took the top and bottom off. And I do think that it's kind of just a nice long scene. I think I want to do that. I know it stresses me out because once I cut them, I can't uncut them. It's a little stressful, but I do think that will work the best. Now, what is next is sort of deciding where we want to put our little ghosties. Well, I guess cutting it is the first thing to do. I don't know, that stresses me out too much. Let's plan where the ghosts are going to go, and then we'll cut everything at the end. I'm thinking we're going to do at least one somewhere around this building here, maybe somewhere. I'm really not sure, actually. At this point, I was feeling really indecisive about what I wanted to do next, but I did know we needed ghosts. We had to figure out what they were going to look like, so I started sketching some out, playing around with different sizes. And can we just take a second to appreciate this guy with the noodle arms? So funny. We didn't end up using that ghost, unfortunately, but I did get one ghost cut out and sort of placed in the scene where I thought that it would work, right behind this little carriage like it was walking down the sidewalk. And I thought that was a good place. But I still wasn't super happy with the background. I knew going into this piece that I wanted to create a background collage that was just as complex, just as beautiful, just as intricate as any of my other collages I would make that I didn't add ghosts to. I didn't want to rely on the ghosts to be the most interesting part of the collage. So I went back to some of the other postcards I had and started to cut out parts of buildings that I thought maybe I could sort of add to the other halves of buildings that I was dealing with in the original 3 postcards I had picked. I also decided it would be so much more interesting if I could create a cityscape that didn't have, sort of a flat edge on the top, and instead figure out a way to have the tops of the buildings and the city skyline itself be the top of the collage. That way we could add more layers and more buildings behind everything and really create that sort of dense, mishmashed, weird looking city block that I had originally mentioned. And I'm so glad I ended up revisiting this part because it ended up being so much more interesting, and this collage itself would be great even without the ghosts. So the last thing to do is just clean up that rough edge a little bit with a postcard. And this is horrible X-Acto knife technique. Do not do that. But now the postcards are all aligned on the bottom and we have the jagged edge of the cityscape at the top. Now it is really ghost time. We got to figure out how many ghosts we want to add, how big they're going to be. I think I originally thought I was going to make people-sized ghosts, but then I cut out some of the bigger ones and I thought that they looked so much more fun on the scene. I like this idea of these huge ghosts floating around that, you can't even see and they're just sort of really huge. So once I decided on the 3 that I liked and sort of where I wanted to position them on the city block, I traced them onto tissue paper and then cut them out very carefully. Tissue paper is obviously much more delicate than normal paper, so I was trying to be really careful. I also had to sort of cut inside of my pencil line so you wouldn't see any of the lines of my pencil that I used to trace on the tissue paper. So I was just really mindful of that going through this. But once I got my 3 ghosties on, oh my goodness, it's so exciting. The next step is getting our ghosts really integrated into the scene and figure out what elements I wanted to tuck the ghosts behind. So this one is getting tucked behind the carriage. And I will say I had to be really careful not to rip the tissue paper because I was sticking tissue paper into, this postcard is kind of thick. I would say it's more like a cardstock. So you're sticking tissue paper into cuts you made in cardstock. And it was a little bit more difficult than normal paper. So I just had to be really careful. But I ended up getting this ghost tucked behind that building and it just kind of looks like he's going around the building. Oh, I really love that. This last ghost I got tucked behind this pillar. So it kind of looked like he was walking through this sort of fence, this gate area. And I also wanted to tuck him behind this person, which is always a little bit tricky because the people ended up being really small and hard to cut out. But I think that he got tucked back there really perfectly. And I love that you can see a little bit of the background. It's so great. So next step is gluing and starting to see what the ghosts look like when they're now glued onto the scene, because I knew they were definitely going to become even more transparent once I got them into the scene. And as you can see with this ghost, definitely you can still see him, but he's a lot lighter than when you just have the tissue paper on top. I was thinking I maybe could experiment with putting 2 layers of tissue paper on and see if that maybe makes the ghost stand out a little bit more even on the scene. But I don't know, I kind of like this sort of hazy ghost. I don't know, it fits with ghosts, so I guess it's not that bad. But the one thing I did start to think about with this was there a way I could get the ghost to stand off just a little bit more? And it's mostly this 3rd ghost on the left. Well, I guess it's the first ghost if you're looking left to right. This first ghost was really lost. So I did, and this was so nerve-wracking, but I played around a little bit with putting a very small white Posca line outline to the ghosts and just have that little pop of the outline that separates the ghost from the background. Now, I think that this made the ghost pop a lot more and I really like this, but I'm not sure this is gonna be everyone's favorite solution, but it is what I ended up doing and I think that it made the ghost pop a little bit more. And the last thing I did was add 2 little eyes to each of the ghosts. I don't know, I just thought that sort of gave them a little bit of a personality and gave them a little bit more of a presence, and I don't know, I just really love it. And here is the finished collage. I am so happy with this piece. There's so many things I love about it. I love the transparent ghosts. I love the cityscape jagged skyline I ended up creating. It's weird, but still looks kind of real. I feel like I integrated all of the postcards I used pretty well, and I'm really, really happy with how all of this turned out. And the back is actually really interesting too, so I wanted to share what that looked like with all the different parts of the postcard sticking together. I just thought that looked kind of interesting, so I figured I'd share. So I hope that you all enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!